Welcome, everybody, to the Popdoc podcast. I have with me Cassie Charlton, who directed Psychics in the Suburbs, a great short doc that I thoroughly enjoyed and was very fascinating and is blowing up on Popdoc as we speak. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is definitely, how did you meet your character, the star of your film, Florence, who, obviously is very, very interesting.
I met Florence actually through another psychic who I was a sort of a cousin of mine. At a barbecue one day, I met her and we're getting to know each other, and I asked her, what does she do? And, I said, I'm talking about being, a fledgling filmmaker at film school. And she told me she was a psychic medium. And immediately I was sort of like, wait, what? Like, this is a job. This is something that people do. They make a living through doing this. So originally I started following my cousin, and through that process, I met a lot of other psychics along the way. And Florence was, in fact, I think at one stage, one of her teachers. And she was just this huge, bold, brassy, can't take your eyes sort of off her kind of person. So in many ways, yeah, I found Florence along the journey of entering this strange, unknown world and feeling my way through it and meeting people along the way. And yeah, Florence was just someone who I met indirectly, really, and just captured me immediately with the clothes she wore, the way she spoke, the way she made people feel. So yeah, that was, yeah.
Well, I mean, part of your story of what was interesting was I felt like also the cast of characters surrounding Florence, in terms of, I'm assuming they're people who are kind of like regular clients of hers who go to her to talk to dead family members or whatnot. How did you choose those people?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first real serious proper films that I made. So much of it was intuition. I guess there wasn't some sort of formula that I was setting out with, but I guess two things. Like, the first thing was access. Are these people actually going to let me into their lives? You can like look at someone and say, oh, I desperately want to film with them. But, the sensitivity of this material and the kind of weight of the emotions doesn't mean the door will always open for you. So, there were a lot of people I spoke to who were like, no way, you're not filming me having a psychic reading with Florence. And no way, you're not filming me talking about my dead relatives. So a lot of it was, a lot of the characters I chose were really just because they were open to the process. But that said, I also was trying to find people who were in the middle of something, whose grief was quite raw, who were really on a journey with Florence in many ways to working out how to cope, really, and how to survive the death of another and what happens when you're the one who's left behind. And so, yeah, Danielle, who's sort of the main character that you see, who loses her dog. I mean, I was filming with a lot of characters, but I guess because I was with her at a time when she lost someone, her dog, who she was very close with, she ultimately made the cut because she spoke to the story of the film the most.
Yeah, there was one shot of her that was just so heart-wrenching, at the very end. You know what I'm talking about, where it's over Florence's shoulder. She's crying and Florence is comforting her. But then there's like a guy behind her, like trying to getting Florence's attention to get her autograph or, like something. I don't know what it was. And Florence is trying to like talk to him at the same time.
Yeah.
It was so painful to watch, But I was like, man, she captured just a fantastic moment right there. I was glad you followed it up with having Florence and the other woman getting a moment alone off to the side. Just, I don't know, there was something that was satiating about that, but the moment before where it was three people, it was so painful and so good. When you were capturing that, you must have been like, oh, I've got a great story.
I mean, the truth is that after Florence's shows, when she essentially is mobbed by people in some ways, you don't really know what you're getting sometimes. I guess I didn't really work out the power of that until we were in the edit, in a way, because at that show, in fact, I had 2 shooters. So, maybe there were 3 actually. Anyway, it was complete overkill, but I was a new filmmaker and nervous about missing the action. So it was covered from like 25 different angles. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, I do remember that moment happening, but it was in the edit really when you look back at those rushes and you can hear the audio properly, and you can begin to understand where it fits into someone's piece. But yeah, I mean, I think that little moment where Danny is clearly just so upset, and Florence is comforting her, and that man comes over and tries to talk to her and take her attention away. There was just something about that moment which was like the light and the dark of kind of what Florence does. At one time, Danielle's being comforted, and another time a guy's coming up to tell Florence how excited he was that there was a connection being made. So it's almost like 2 sides of the same coin. This grief and this relief. I think that Florence's work kind of taps into. And I should also just say, like Danielle was and remains like an incredibly precious kind of documentary character to me, and someone who I formed a strong bond with, and who was so open and willing and to share her story. And yeah, I mean, the trust that she placed in me, that's something that's really quite dear to me, and I a treasure, actually. Yeah.
What did you learn from the process of making this film about psychics and the people who followed them?
I mean, I walked in as a complete skeptic. I grew up sort of surrounded by kind of new age stuff myself. Like my mum was quite into crystals and quite into, different kinds of healing and all this sort of stuff. So I kind of had this teenage like kind of rebellion kind of vibe that I brought to it. And reconciling that with kind of seeing people who were genuinely in need and genuinely grieving, and genuinely in need of connection of some kind. I think I learnt to soften or broaden my understanding, or at least change a little bit my perception of what psychics do. It really did. I think the film is sort of cast as a bit of a journey film. I set out really interested in these bold, larger than life characters, who do just like absolutely crazy stuff, and who could believe it. And really I was, the more I investigated, the more I went into it, the more people I met, the more emotions that flowed, the more I was, like, hang on a minute, this is serving some kind of purpose. And yeah, I think learning about what the experience is like for clients, I think I was very focused on the psychics to start with, and through the process I learned what it's like on the other side of the reading.
There was one scene where Florence is in there and she's doing a stand-up reading for people, and it seems like it was a kind of a miss, where it was a moment where nobody said you were right. What happened after that? I wondered, like, was there a moment you captured or weren't allowed to put it in the film or something?
The thing about Florence is that nothing gets to her. Like, she might have a really bad day, and I can see that as I'm filming her. And, I get to know, the kind of how readings flow, and a really good show compared to a really kind of not great show. So I could see it wasn't a great show, but, she is a professional. Like, there's some ways, there actually wasn't a moment after that. She sort of just like got back on the horse. She sort of, I imagine, got off stage, fixed the makeup, and then got back to the booth where she was going to do 25 fast turnaround one-on-one readings. Like nothing particularly phases Florence at all. And that was one of the reasons I was like attracted to her, is just how tough as nails she is, really. Yeah. I'm
going to shift gears a little bit over into the filmmaking side of things. And So with making this film, you said you were in school or whatnot. Did you have funding for this? Did you have no funding for this? You know, did you just put this together with gear that you got from school? You know, what was that process?
So the process, I started developing it at school, like as part of an Obdoc kind of module that I was doing as part of film school. So initially I was just scrounging around for gear. Like we did have a gear store at school, so I tried to get my hands on stuff that way, borrow from friends. To start with, I was really just, out on my own, recording terrible sound and awful picture. I look back on some of that. Oh my God. I have, it was nice to see that it did, progressively get better as it went along. But it wasn't until I always had my eye on this emerging filmmakers fund that the Australian Broadcasting Corporation does here. And in many ways, I just kept developing the idea. I kept it broad. I think that's what I did to start with, like until I knew I wanted for a film to be on screen. I knew I wanted an audience for a film that I made. So I didn't get stuck with one particular story. Like at one point I was following 3 characters. At one point I was pitching it into, bigger production companies who were looking at making it a reality series, and really the Obdoc stuff I was shooting, at one point it was like maybe more of a feature film with a higher budget, and I'd stop shooting terrible footage and, we get in a proper cinematographer. So, and in the end, so like it had lots of different iterations. And I guess the key for me was just keeping it broad, responding to the market, I guess, with it. And when you have an idea or you have good characters, like you can actually, you can change up, the kind of way you want to tell a story to match, to suit different needs. So yeah, in the end though, I was really happy that we got this, we got a commission through ABC, and it was funded really quite well for a first time filmmaker. And it meant that I could keep I didn't really want my voice in it, but I mean, it could keep closer to the kind of tone that I always envisaged for the film, which was sort of curious, really Australian, set in the suburbs. So in some ways, yeah, even though it was a smaller production than perhaps like a big shiny reality show, I was happy to keep my hands on the story and, and make the film that I wanted to make. So yeah, I was happy with that.
When did you know that you wanted to be a documentary filmmaker?
I just grew up, I think I grew up as an observer. Like I think growing up as a child, I think I just grew up as an observer and someone who noted behaviors and someone who analyzed things and did a lot of watching. So I feel like it's sort of, part of my nature always. But in terms of picking up a camera, I mean, I just started filming family. That was one of the things I started doing when I was a teenager. And then moving into film school, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can pinpoint when. I decided to, at around 27, I decided, okay, do I want to try and make some money out of this? So that was probably the point where I decided to commit. Yeah, at around 27, when I realized you're not going to be rich doing this, but if you're okay with that, then it's an amazing life to lead, to be invited into people's homes and to, take a camera with you is an incredible privilege. Yeah.
Well, as we close out here, why don't you tell the audience what else you have on tap and where they can follow you online?
What else on tap? Well, I'm in the land of television now, so, making science programs for ABC. And in terms of finding me, I'm really bad at social media. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, the production company who are dear friends of mine who produce this are Media Stockades. So, if you have big, bold ideas that, are international ideas, then, I would reach out to us and those guys because, amazing production company who are really interested in hearing from aspiring young filmmakers too.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time and your film, Cassie.
No worries. Thank you. Nice to meet you.